Welcome back to Reimagined Energy. This week, we're coming to you from the MB Power Energizing Efficiency 2025 conference, where we had a chance to speak with a range of incredible voices working across Canada's clean energy landscape. Thanks to MB Power, we covered a lot of ground, from energy efficient building design and large scale retrofits to solar growth, Indigenous energy leadership, biomass solutions, and the role of education in building a sustainable future. There's so much happening behind the scenes in this transition, and these conversations are a reminder that it takes all kinds of expertise to move us forward. So let's jump in. Hi, Liam.
Hey, Maria.
Welcome to the Reimagined Energy podcast. We're here at the Energizing Efficiency conference with MB Power.
MB Power in beautiful Fredericton, New Brunswick.
I know, and you're speaking today. So you're with Navigate Energy. Tell everyone what you guys are all about.
So Navigate Energy was founded to help simplify deep energy retrofits and net zero retrofits, primarily for businesses, nonprofit organizations that lack a team, expertise, knowledge, resources to pursue those projects in-house.
Awesome. What are you going to be speaking about today?
So today we're talking about Pictou Net Zero project. So it's a project that was helping 20 community centers in Pictou County, Nova Scotia, do deep retrofits to their rural halls.
So what do you find some of your challenges that are happening or opportunities that you want building owners to know? Because you work a lot.
We work a lot with building owners. We work a lot with decision makers, volunteer boards. And so there's a few things that we typically help them out with, Maria. And so the first one is that it's never been more affordable to do deep energy retrofits. So the amount of funding and supports that are there to help with offsetting the costs through rebates, through tax credits, through government grants makes it more affordable today than ever before to invest in upgrades like heat pumps, solar, insulation, LED lighting.
So just to expand on that, like what would you say to a building owner who was thinking about retrofitting? You know, they're challenged, they don't know where to start. What direction would you point them?
So at first we want to take a look at your energy bills, see what those costs look like. Do they have high oil bills? Do they have high electricity bills? And really get an idea of what that baseline for them looks like. So are they higher than their neighbor, for example? And so after that, there's that pain point that we typically hear of energy bills are really costly, doesn't allow us to invest the money where we want to be. We're paying that oil bill rather than reinvesting back into our people or our community. So we're one, hearing those pain points, then two, usually walking through the building to see what those opportunities could look like. And so usually owners are talking to us about heating systems, that there's a need to replace their heating system, or they want to do solar panels because they saw their neighbor or someone in the community do solar panels. Typically, we're looking for a little bit more cost-effective solutions than that first. So where can they save through conservation, insulating their walls, upgrades that don't require any maintenance?
The simple things.
Turn the thermostats down, turn the lights off at night. A lot of the times we go a lot deeper than that. And so it does start to look at what are the building envelope solutions, then the mechanical solutions, and then the renewable energy on site to meet the rest of their heating needs or energy needs.
Excellent. So what are you hoping to get out of today's conference?
NB Power is great for always helping us build out relationships. That's typically the reason that we make this trek, but we're doing more and more work across Atlantic Canada. Definitely in New Brunswick, there's amazing rebate programs right now, especially on the business side of things. And so for us today is, one, learn more about those programs so that we can help their community take advantage of them. And then two, talk to a bit more of those building owners that could really use the support of implementing a deep retrofit.
That's wonderful. Tell me how you got into this industry. Sidetrack a little bit.
Yeah, sidetrack a little bit. I got into this industry straight out of school. And so I went to school for community design, basically city planning. That turned into understanding policy and understanding how to talk to the community. Started my role at Efficiency Nova Scotia doing community engagement work. Stayed there for about 8 years building out programs that would be similar to what MB Power offers. And then from there, started to see the need in the private sector that we'd be teeing projects up for owners, and then a fire would pop up in their business.
Right.
That project would completely fall to the side, and they'd forget all about it. And saw that need in the marketplace to really jump in as a champion to help handhold people through these programs through their own retrofits.
Now, this is a lead into my next question.
Yeah.
Is there's quite there's a gap. I mean, there's a trade skill gap. There's a gap in the retrofit and also the renewable energy sector. What would you say to somebody who's considering this as a career?
It is a great career to get into. It's never been a better time to get into this career field. Certainly either the sustainability sector or the clean energy space, whether that is insulating and installing solar panels on the roofs of people's homes or helping navigate those programs that are available to all of us across the country and across this province.
That's wonderful. Well, thank you for your time, Liam.
Thanks, Maria.
It was great
Really
to chat
appreciate
with
it.
you. Enjoy the rest of your conference.
I certainly will.
See you later. Hi, everybody. I'm here with Carl Divenborden. I got that right?
That's good.
Oh, that's good. We're here at the NB Energy, the conference, which is really, really great. Great sessions. You just came out of the EV session. So you're also speaking today. You spoke earlier. And I don't know, Carl here is quite the guru here in the province of New Brunswick. And so tell me a little bit about, how you got to where you are now. I mean, you have a long history.
Well, yeah. I grew up as a farm boy.
Yes.
I grew up on a dairy farm. And I was going into a career in agriculture, but always, even back then, I had a concern about sustainability. I see smoke going and I'd wonder, where does that go? And I had this uneasy feeling. And over the years, I got a little more educated on environmental issues and thought, this is really serious. At some point, we're going to have to come to grips with this. I had a wonderful early career in agriculture. And then in 2005, I pivoted. I joined Efficiency New Brunswick when it started up. Because all of a sudden I thought, wait a minute, efficiency, that's the right thing to do. Yeah. And I can make my living doing that. Right. So I was there for about a year and a half. And then I had a chance to get trained with Al Gore when An Inconvenient Truth came out.
Wow.
Because I remember reading that book and thinking, I think this is going to be a game changer. And so I thought, this is where my little voice inside me saying, do something, actually can be a big voice saying, do something. Yeah. And so I went down to Nashville, trained with Al Gore, and that kind of launched the career I'm in ever since. Speaking, writing, and consulting on sustainability. And my focus is sustainability. And obviously, I can go on for a long time about the risks and the challenges of climate change, but if you speak climate change, then you also need to speak energy, because energy makes the world go round. And the trick is we need to just change where we get our energy from so that we don't cause climate change in the process of getting our energy. And that essentially means decarbonizing. So I like the space anywhere in that broad definition of decarbonizing our world and living more sustainably within the limitations of our planet.
Right. Right now, your interests are lying with Solar New Brunswick, a new organization just started in January. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I'm really excited about the potential of solar.
Yeah.
A friend of mine who was one of the early people in solar used to always say, the sun never sends a bill.
That's true.
And I thought, that is true. Yeah. Once you put up the collector, the sun never sends a bill. Free energy in perpetuity. Well, in our own lives, I strive to walk the walk if I'm going to talk the talk. So in our own lives, we have tried to really reduce our carbon footprint. So we have an R2000 house. We have a pretty big garden. We even have backyard chickens. And we've always driven fuel-efficient vehicles. Well, a number of years ago, we transitioned over to electric vehicles because I'm conscious of our individual pie chart of our carbon footprint, I guess you could say. And the big slices for most of us are our consumption of electricity and our transportation. And the third one probably is our food. So we're as much as we can into our own local food and all that type of thing. But on the transportation one, I figured, you know what, if we can eliminate that slice by going electric, that's a big chunk out of that pie. Then the next step is, well, where can we get that electricity from so that it is clean electricity versus the grid electricity, which has some clean, but also a lot of dirty. So about 5 years ago, we started exploring the notion of having solar energy. And I was so worried about making that investment because I thought, I know it works other places in the world, and I know it's supposed to save money and all these kinds of things, but it seemed like a scary thing to do until finally I just did it.
Awesome.
I had a very patient installer who answered many questions for me. I always say probably the same questions over and over and over again. So finally we just took the leap. We put in this first solar system. And it worked so well. By my math, it was providing, it's just a small system, but it was providing over half of our energy for our home and our EVs. So we waited a few years. We put our second solar array in, and now we're net zero on an annualized basis. Just went through our first full year of net zero on an annualized basis for our energy, our power consumption, and our transportation. And remember, the two big slices of our pie. And I like sharing this story because I always think, I'm not that smart. I hummed and hawed and I struggled with it.
Yeah.
I always say, if I can do it, anyone can do it. And sometimes we see targets we always hear targets about 2050, 2040, 2030. And I'm thinking, folks, don't have to wait that long.
Yeah, it's here
and by
now.
the way, a zero power bill looks pretty good too.
Yeah, it does. It really does.
Yeah. So I'm a solar aficionado, and I thought, how can we accelerate this? Because not just from an individual householder point of view, but I think from a provincial point of view, how can we accelerate solar to the point where we are more energy self-sufficient? Like, for example, here's a startling fact, I think. That is, if you go to NB Power's annual report, you see that we spend a ton of money on imported fuel. Now, we do export finished electricity as well. But when you look at the net difference between the two, we're sending about $1 million a day out of the province for imported fuel. And I think to myself, imagine what we could do if we could keep that money here.
Oh, yeah.
The dream of energy self-sufficiency. I think solar has big potential for taking us there. It's not a panacea, perfect solution.
Right.
But I think it can take us a long way. So I've been active getting solar in New Brunswick started up, consulting with the folks down at Solar Nova Scotia to help us. And we're really excited and ramping up. We think the timing is right because interest in solar is taking off like crazy.
It really is. And as I do this podcast, I'm realizing that there is no one solution to this energy crisis, I guess you could say, with renewables. You need solar, you need wind, you need battery storage, you need biomass. Like, there's so many, we all have to work together to find the right solution and the right fit that's for you. You would agree with that?
Yeah, because the first thing someone will say is, solar, right? What happens when the sun goes down?
Yeah,
right?
That's right.
So storage is an enormous issue here, but there's all kinds of exciting stuff happening in storage too. Like, for example, we have a small home storage system. Now, it's not to make us off-grid so much. It's more our battery backup when the power goes out.
That's right.
And it works beautifully. When the power goes out, we barely notice because our battery just picks up, and we have a normal life with the lights on when all the neighbors are out in the dark or dragging out generators and hoping they'll start.
That's true.
So it's a start of it, but I think the bigger solutions may be some of these large battery packs that you see in some parts of the world, or they may be things like hydro dams that you say, let's just hold that water above the dam during the day while the sun is shining, and then at night we'll run the hydro plant.
Right.
Or in some cases, there's even this thing called pump storage where they'll pump water from a lower body to an upper body during the day when there's tons of extra power, and then they can generate electricity. It's called pump storage.
Right.
And then the other thing is the potential of our EV batteries going forward.
Right.
As we get more EVs, to be a big part of balancing and managing the grid.
Definitely.
Because one little point that just is pretty amazing. We have just a 5 kilowatt hour battery down in the basement that carries us through the night as our backup system.
Right.
But in our car, our EV, 65 kilowatt. 65 kilowatt
that's
hour.
battery storage right there in the driveway.
Right there. We just need a tech to be able to access it.
Yeah, bidirectional.
Yeah.
Bidirectional.
Yep.
That's the way it's got to go.
Yep.
So what are your thoughts about the future going ahead? What do you envision the next 5 years are going to look like?
Well, I often share that it was about 7 years ago that I started this whole investigation journey from confusion to installation on solar. And today, here we are, net zero. And change is exponential. So if that was 7 years of fast change, well, the next 7 years are going to be even faster. So imagine the possibilities. I would hope to see, as we go forward, I hope to see that we become much more acutely aware of efficiency, that we become much more energy literate, so people know what consumes what. I hope we are guided by pricing signals so that, for example, if the utility has a hard time managing the grid at breakfast time and supper time because everybody is using so much power, maybe we need to make power a little more expensive then, and then cheaper overnight, so that loads that can be transferred, like hot water, laundry, dryers in particular, well, we'll have an incentive for everybody to do them overnight.
In the evening,
And then I'm hopeful that there will be things like big solar community projects that individuals can invest into, so that communities can kind of take a bit of ownership of their own energy, and people can really feel like they own it. When people own things, they take ownership, right? And they become engaged, and that's what we need for energy.
I love that idea. One last question before I let you go, and I'm asking this a lot. There's the youth is. What would you say to somebody who's considering this path as a career? There's a shortage in industry, trades, solar technicians, engineers. What would you say to somebody who's considering energy renewables as a future career?
Oh, good heavens, go for it. There are opportunities in so many areas. You hear about, right from the trades. We are going to need so many people in the trades in the future.
We are.
And sometimes trades get denigrated a little bit. Look, I'm a big believer in the trades. There are so many important things that need to be done. And some of this stuff that people are now installing, it's complicated. You need a good brain to be able to work your way through that. All of these systems for bidirectional power and managing and hybrid inverters and all that. Yeah, so we need a lot of tradespeople, but we need a lot of electrical engineers. I think we need people who can build the business case and market good things, because I think a big trick to making energy successful is to make it the desirable renewable energy and all of these things that we need successful, is to make them the desirable thing that everybody wants. And as soon as everybody wants it, it will happen.
Yeah, and that starts with neighbors getting solar things on solar panels on their roofs, and people are like, I want that too. It all spreads, and energy literacy, as you touched on, is very important. Carl, thank you so much for joining me today.
It's been a pleasure chatting.
Enjoy the rest of the conference.
Thank you.
Hi, Shane.
Hello.
Glad to have you today.
Thank you.
It's really great. So you are with, oh my gosh.
Old Novik Education Center.
Thank you so much. I have a thing with pronouncing words, and it's important for me that I get it right. But you're here at the conference, and you were telling me earlier that you're working on a curriculum of programs for the Education Center. Tell me a little bit more about that.
Okay, so right now I'm the program manager for a mobile unit. It's basically going to be a transport truck trailer that's going to be traveling across the Indigenous communities in New Brunswick, teaching STEAM, so science, technology, engineering, art, and mathematics. And we want to develop something around energy curriculum to help support some of the energy initiatives that are going around in the province and federally right now.
Tell me a little bit about that, because you guys have a lot on the go. This is energy literacy, definitely. So,
Yes.
how are you going to break it down? Is it going to be in very simple terms or intermediate?
So we want to start off just kind of novice. So we'd start off doing energy literacy. You'll kind of get a feeler with how people react to that.
Right.
And if somebody wants to go into something more intermediate, we're hoping to build partnerships to be able to move them on into industry or post-secondary education or nonprofit. So we kind of want to give the basis of education to be able to give somebody the skills and opportunity to move on and do something, whatever it is, based on their energy future.
So this mobile unit that's going to be traveling throughout the province, what's going to be inside? Are there going to be displays, demonstrations of how things work?
Yes, so right now we don't really have much energy curriculum, but we have a lot of 3D modeling, 3D printing, CAD software. We're doing CNC, so a lot of stuff is built based on a makerspace, so it's making things, but we can kind of mix things up and tie in energy curriculum with a lot of the stuff. So just say 3D modeling, you can 3D model a windmill, for example,
Right.
and 3D print the components, use the electrical engineering skills to build the electrical system. So
Wow.
basically we have all the tools available to
To
build
mimic-
something
to-
related to renewable energy or build something related to any industry.
And that's how you learn. You learn by seeing and doing and understanding how it all works and comes together. Tell me about, there's another role that you play as well. And Shane, that is also, you have something on the side that is really cool and interesting.
Yes, I do geothermal greenhouses.
Yeah.
So essentially what a geothermal greenhouse is, we use the sun for supplemental heating. But when it's nice and warm in the day, we take the sun, we pump it into the ground with fans. The ground acts as a thermal mass, so it holds the heat. And whenever the temperature drops, we let the warmer air rise. So just say in New Brunswick, for example, when it's minus 20 in January, if you're using a heating system in your greenhouse, instead of trying to heat minus 20, well, you'll be heating, just say, between -1 and 5 degrees Celsius. So it uses a lot less energy.
What are you hoping to get out of today and tomorrow of the conference?
I'm just hoping to build some connections, meet some people that can help develop some curriculum, give me some ideas for curriculum that I can develop, find some industry partners that would be interested in partnering with our organization, or maybe taking on some of our interns or youth after they're done with some of our programming. That's really about it.
This is the place to do it. And I'm so happy that you stopped by the booth and say hello, Shane.
Thank you.
All right. Best wishes with the mobile unit that's going to teach a lot of people really great things about renewable energy.
I'm looking forward to it. Thank you.
Hi, Jonathan.
Hello there.
Jonathan Levesque of Biomass Solution. Biomassy?
BMS.
Hey, BMS. That's great. So welcome to the conference here, and you're taking in a lot of the sessions. How are things going so far?
Oh, so far so good. A lot of interesting stuff. So looking forward to the rest of the conference as well.
I bet. Tell me a little bit about your organization and what you're doing.
Well, I wear two hats at the conference. One, yes, I'm the general manager for BSB. We're basically selling biomass boilers and furnaces. We're in the heating side of the business for mostly commercial, institutional application. And also I sit on the board of the Wood Pellet Association of Canada. So I'm here to represent the association to, again, stimulate the use of wood pellets within the region.
Tell me a little bit more about that, the wood pellets. I mean, it's an alternative fuel source. I'm hearing that these little pellets are almost like little batteries in some way. So expand on that a little bit, on what you're working toward.
Well, actually, not just New Brunswick, but Canada is a pretty large producer of wood pellets. We're really good at making them. We're just not as good as using them.
How so?
How so? Because most of our market, I would say close to 90% of the volume leaves the country to Europe and Asia, mostly.
Really? You said 80% is
close to 90. Across Canada, it's close to 90%.
So why are we so late to the game? We have so much wood here.
Well, other countries have experienced higher energy costs than us, higher electricity costs. Things will eventually change because of that here. Like there's more awareness now that, people are looking at their power bill. It's getting higher.
Right.
What is my solution to fix the problem? So this is why the market has been over years and years, mostly especially Europe. Asia is newer type of market, but you have countries like Austria and Sweden that have been embracing biomass, like wood pellets and wood chips, for the last 35, 40 years. It's quite like Austria, as an example, 37 of their heating is from biomass. 37% of their heating is from biomass.
What kind of projects do you have on the go right now?
We do schools, we do greenhouses, we do commercial buildings, welding shops. It varies in terms of size. This is the type of, we focus on institutional, government buildings and all this. And lately we're bigger, more demand on the greenhouses. Because greenhouses, they don't need cooling, and they're often in remote area where natural gas is not available. So if they're using oil, it is really a no-brainer for them to look for biomass.
Right. And you need the space to have the setup, don't you? Kind of more of a rural suburban setting?
Yes and no.
Okay.
There's all kinds of way that you can do underground storage for your wood pellets. There's like, or inside the building where there's an empty spot. Like there's all, depending on the size again.
Right.
I'm not saying that all buildings are good potential for retrofit to biomass and wood pellets. But let's not say that in an urban area that's impossible because of the space limitation. It can really be done, but it is, yes, easier to do in rural application.
Yes.
Obviously, because the footprint of a biomass boiler is bigger than any gas or oil. It's not like the
Right.
same capacity. I would say that usually the boiler would be 3 times the size, roughly. Then you need to have the storage. And again, the storage, depending on where you're, how far you are from your, either wood pellet producer or wood chips provider, whatever your supplier, then you can have a smaller supply with many deliveries. And again, depend on the volume that you're using in a year. So.
Where do you get your wood pellets from? Are there certain provinces that focus on the production of them?
There's almost pellet production in every provinces in Canada. PEI, I think, is the only one in Saskatchewan without,
Right.
or Manitoba. But it's really big on the western side, like BC is king in terms of the volume. But on the eastern side of the country, let's say New Brunswick, we have 5 producers. When you look at New Brunswick alone, we are the most intensive pellet per population type of, more than BC, because of our total production compared to the size of our province and everything. It's the most pellet intensive province in Canada.
Yeah. Okay. So let's say how much do you need? How many wood pellets would you need? How many pounds or kilograms, or does it to operate, say, over a 1 month period? I know it depends on.
For a house?
Let's say a house. Yeah.
A house, I will use a quote or a volume, depending on the size of the house and how warm
Yes.
you want it inside.
Yeah.
It varies between 3.5, 4 ton up to 6, 7, 8 tons, depending on the size of the house. But a lot of the houses are 4 or 5 ton a year.
Let's talk about the individual pellets themselves. It's really compressed sawdust, right? Are they all the same? Or some is some types of wood better than others? Sawdust?
There's 2 types of pellet grade.
Okay.
There's one we call industrial, and the other one, we call them premium residential grade pellets. The biggest difference between them is the ash content, because you can use in pellet production, yes, sawmill waste like the sawdust, the shavings, sometimes wood chips. If you don't have any market for it, then you can. This is prime material for a pellet mill. But also on the industrial side, we can add maybe bark. Bark has more minerals and it's also dirty with more mud on it because of it's on the outside of the logs. But also we can use biomass from the forest, basically the tops and branches that are most of the time left in the forest.
Well, even like a hurricane, cleaning up after a
Hurricane
storm.
wood is exactly. This is why a lot of people forget that forests in Canada is the biggest CO2 emitter.
Wow.
Like we look at, it's more than any fossil fuel being burned. Yes, forests absorb carbon like CO2 when it grows. It will emit CO2 when it dies. And if you let wood dying, it will emit CO2 and another gas that's called methane that's 28 times worse than CO2. So there's like a bang for the buck. There's more advantage of managing our forests to make sure we don't have dead wood decaying in the forest, or we have a use for it. And also that will allow having a viable biomass market to do proper forest management. Today, Austria and Sweden are growing 40% more forest than they were 30, 40 years ago. Why? Because they have a real big biomass market. There's a revenue for every piece of wood in that forest. Here, it's as long as the sawmill wants to pay you a good price for your type of product, but if it's not good for the sawmill, you won't get much. And the pulp mills, as long as it's the right species or quality, then you're okay. But if you're not meeting one of the two, the value is almost zero. So it doesn't allow like proper forest management to at least recover some of the money you're spending by. It's like a garden. If you plant your carrots too tight,
Right.
they won't grow. They won't grow big. So if you space them, boom,
Yeah.
here they grow. Forest is exactly the same. So this is where we could have a double whammer by using wood that's dying in the forest right now because there's no market for it, and also growing more wood at the end. So absorb more carbon and use some of the carbon that would be the CO2 that would be emitted anyway, but we control it in a controlled environment that is a boiler or a pellet stove.
That is awesome. I never knew that. What about the byproduct of these pellets? What about the ashes? Do they just go back into the ground and, ashes
They're
to ashes?
amazing fertilizer. If you want to, let's say, you have a piece of land that doesn't grow much or it's poor soil quality whatsoever, add a little bit of ash and you'll see the difference.
Yeah, and that's why agricultural, people.
Back in the days, people were using their wood stove ashes back in the garden.
Yeah, that's true. You're absolutely right.
There was a reason for that.
Natural fertilizer.
So there's nothing being wasted in terms of the waste from burning biomass can be reused over and over. So it's like a full cycle to grow more. And again, this applies for wood, but it also applies for agriculture product. Biomass is just not wood biomass. Like the only thing with agriculture product, there's more like, I'm not saying chemicals. Yeah, in a way, chemicals from the burning that are sometimes damaging to the boiler itself. But again, there's some energy. There's some boilers that are designed for that. It's just to show that any type of biomass can be used and do something with it. We're used to throw that away and don't do anything.
Right, right. Wow. I must say, mind blown. You've really brought some things to my attention. I don't want to keep you any further from this conference here, but thank you so much.
But I'm glad to have the opportunity to talk about biomass, heat, and wood pellets in general, because it is one of the key. I'm not saying it's the only solution, but it's an important solution that it's there to help decarbonizing our economy.
Yeah, exactly. So, that's great. Well, thank you so much for stopping by.
Thank you very much.
Hi, Sean. How are you?
Good. How are you doing?
Great. So, Sean, you're with ACT4 Energy.
That's right.
Are you based here in New Brunswick?
We are. So we have an office in Coquitlam, New Brunswick, and then one here in Fredericton.
Right. How's the conference? What are you getting out of it?
It's been great. Yesterday it was nice to hear the narrative of how efficiency got its start here in New Brunswick and where it's grown to today and what they're looking at focusing on in the years to come. It seems to be a lot of alignment around that message as well, which is cool.
Yes, it's really great to see. A lot of great energy here, pun intended. So tell everyone a little bit about ACT4 and what kind of projects are you working on right now?
Sure. Yeah. So ACT4 got its start, actually ACT4 Forestry was our first company, and it got its start to restore the Acadian forest. That's what ACT4 stands for, ACFOR, Acadian
Forest, yeah.
And so we would typically go in to forests that have been degraded through heavy resource extraction, and we try and restore the ecological attributes of the forest while making it more climate resilient. So as the climate's changing, our forests can't really keep up. And so there's some species here that won't really thrive in the next 10 years. They're not thriving now, and they'll continue to not thrive. But there's other species that are more adapted to a southern region.
Right.
And so making those proportionally greater on the landscape will make the forest more climate resilient. So ACT4 Forestry works on that, and that produces a lot of low-grade material. So,
like wood.
Wood that generally we leave all the limbs from trees and tops from trees in the forest so the nutrients can break down and return to the soil. But there's a part of the tree that sawmills don't want, pulp mills don't want.
Right.
And so it's just generally today being left in the forest to decompose, and it'll emit its carbon anyway.
Right.
And so we're capturing the energy in that and replacing fossil fuels for mostly institutional and commercial heating, like schools, hospitals, campuses. We have a campus at Nova Scotia Community College in Bridgewater, Nova Scotia, and we're looking at doing 2 more campuses for Nova Scotia Community College. And they like it because they're now buying their fuel from about 50 kilometers from the facility. And so all of their fuel spend, like at one campus, it's about $200,000 instead of leaving the province is now going to their community.
Exactly. So what does it look like when you're harvesting the trees and so on, and what makes them climate resistant? Is it they're spaced apart better? The soil's different?
Yeah, typically when we go in, it's kind of like we have a team of foresters and ecologists that are kind of like forest doctors. They'll go in and through a bunch of technology and processes measure the condition of the forest with the focus of what's this forest missing, or what could we do to make it more climate resilient. And it's always a bit different. A lot of times it has to do with the species that are there. So for instance, balsam fir is really not going to do well in this region in the future climate. And so if that's occupying 60% of the canopy, its seed will seed the next generation unless we intervene. And so we'll generally try and decrease that amount and then increase a species like red maple or white pine or maybe even red oak, all species that will thrive with a warming climate.
So why balsam fir? What is it? Just a softer wood than others?
Well, we're in an interesting region. We're right in between where the boreal forest starts and the temperate forest starts. So it's a very diverse forest, the Acadian forest or the Wabanaki forest, because it has a bit of both. It has a bit of the boreal and it has a bit of the temperate forest, and it's kind of all mixed throughout different stands depending on the elevation, the soil, how close it is to the coast, and the balsam fir comes from the north. And so as it warms, it's receding to the north. And mostly what's affecting balsam fir are pathogens and pests. And so it doesn't get cold enough anymore to kill those.
Right.
And so they're causing balsam fir to die at quite a young age and decrease in their growth. And so as that occurs, the forest starts sequestering less and less CO2.
Right.
And so the forest is a big vehicle for pulling down CO2 from the atmosphere.
Right.
And if it stops growing vigorously or growing large trees, then one of our biggest tools to mitigate the effects of climate change is we're starting to lose the battle there. And then that speeds up the decline of the forest. So it's like this vicious cycle.
Yeah.
And so we're trying to intervene by making prescriptions to restore those components to make it more climate resilient, but also decrease emissions that would have never been emitted via fossil fuels. And some people are wondering, well, when you're burning trees, you're emitting the carbon from the trees, right? So how is that any better than burning oil? Generally, the way that the world accounts for the life cycle, the carbon life cycle of a tree versus oil, this is all talk at a really high level.
No, it's all good.
But oil underneath the ground would never find its way into the atmosphere unless we drill for it, bring it up, and combust it. It was a carbon sink. It would never have found its way into the atmosphere. However, the carbon embodied in let's say a balsam fir tree, as that tree dies, it will emit its carbon back to the atmosphere. And then the tree that grows where it used to be growing will start sequestering that carbon. So it's this ongoing cycle that perpetuates through time. And they sometimes refer to that as atmospheric carbon. And so we account for the carbon life cycle of biomass differently than we do of fossil fuels.
What is the ideal for forests? Like, I guess there's two questions here. What's the ideal species, I guess, of tree? Well, that is ideal. And plus, are you also prescribing, you have labs that kind of are looking at the trees and how trying to make them more scientifically diverse or climate, they can protect themselves from the climate?
Yeah. There's a number of resources that we work with in academia to determine what we're trying to project here, because forests, like typically the lifespan of a forest in this region is the youngest 60 years and can be 200 years.
That's
and
right.
So
yeah.
We're not thinking about what tree will do best in the next year. We have to think about what tree will do best in the next 100 years.
Right.
And so it's really tough to do that without a lot of research. And so there's a really great forest climate change researcher. His name's Anthony Taylor, right here in Fredericton out of UNB.
Yep.
He produces a lot of great work. Another partner organization that's more in research and academia that we pull from, it's a partnership. So they use our kind of more operational and implementation to do research with Community Forest International out of Sackville, New Brunswick.
Right.
They've produced a lot of great resources to know.
Yeah.
And then NRCan, they have a branch here, the Canadian Forest Service, does a tremendous amount of research around which trees are sequestering the most carbon, what are the effects on drought and wind events, what pests are going to affect the future forests.
Interesting.
We're not from academia, but we just finished a trial 12 kilometers from here at the Acadia Research Forest owned by the federal government, and they're doing thinning trials to understand the effects.
Interesting.
Of climate change. Yeah.
So what does the next 5 years look like for your organization?
Yeah, so we're working on some pretty exciting things. Biomass, we've always said, we're in the energy world to benefit forestry, to close the loop between renewable energy and responsible forestry. And if the responsible forestry part didn't happen, then we're kind of advocates against biomass.
Yeah, that's true.
And so if you're harming forest or degrading forests in the production of biomass, we're actually against that, because you're limiting the climate solution potential of our forests to maybe replace some fossil fuel, but I don't know that we've really gained anything by that. And so we think it's really important when deploying biomass facilities for us to understand where the biomass came from and what its effects were on the source forest. And so we've developed a technology called Forest Ledger, and it's basically to tie a kilowatt hour of biomass derived energy back to a tree.
No way.
Yeah, so it's in somewhat real time. We just finished our first pilot on an actual energy plant in Nova Scotia in partnership with Nova Scotia Community College. And we're producing, so it's a verifiable measurement verification reporting tool that satisfies regulation, but it also has a public communication dashboards, because it's important for the people to understand, like, generally have an opinion around forests.
Right. Yeah.
They're everywhere. They represent about 95% of our land coverage.
Yeah, here in Canada.
In this particular region. And so people want to weigh in and they want to understand what's going on. And so we want to show them that. There's a good story to be told.
Certainly.
Behind the scenes. And so we're hoping to do that through a data-driven approach, because I feel like it's also I think we have to build trust with people, and there's a lot of greenwashing in the space. And so we're just trying to produce the hard data, but translate it into a way that people can understand it. So a lot of drone imagery,
yes,
a lot of photos.
Right. There's more to it when you're looking down from an airplane or driving by on a highway and seeing a forest. There's a lot going on behind the scenes there.
Yeah, for sure.
That's great. Thank you so much, Sean, for stopping by today. Enjoy the rest of the conference.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Alors, bonjour, Liam. Merci de vous joindre à nous aujourd'hui. La première question que j'ai, c'est décrivez-nous qui vous êtes et l'organisation pour laquelle vous travaillez.
Bonjour Chantal, merci. Moi, c'est Riam Al-Kalab. Je travaille à l'Université de Moncton. Je suis la coordinatrice du plan d'action climatique. Je suis responsable des actions climatiques, mais aussi de la coordination et de la gestion des différents programmes liés aux axes de l'Université de Moncton pour atteindre la carboneutralité.
Super.
Et je rappelle quand même que l'Université de Moncton est la plus grande université francophone hors Québec. Et puis on a 3 campus de Moncton, campus d'Edmundston et de Chicago.
Et puis aujourd'hui, on est à la conférence Dynamiser l'efficacité énergétique. Est-ce que vous avez aimé l'expérience d'être ici, de présenter aussi?
Oui, c'était intéressant parce que là, en fait, durant mes 4 dernières années, je présentais que pour des professeurs, des étudiants. Donc là, c'était quand même un cadre un petit peu différent. Là, on est avec des industries, on est avec des professionnels. Ça m'a permis aussi de voir comment on est censé présenter peut-être un petit peu différemment. Les points sont abordés, parfois qui ne sont pas abordés quand on est dans le domaine académique. Ouais, c'était très intéressant.
C'était une bonne présentation et tu vas la répéter aujourd'hui aussi. C'est super, merci.
Merci.
Est-ce que vous avez eu la chance d'écouter d'autres présentations?
Oui.
Et quels étaient les points clés à retenir?
Justement, c'est le fait de voir comment il faut vraiment que les universités travaillent avec les industries, les professionnels, pour voir c'est quoi les besoins aujourd'hui, surtout dans un monde qui change très rapidement. Quels seraient nos besoins pour crise?
Oui.
Je pense que c'est ça le point fort aujourd'hui. Qu'il y ait des connexions entre l'apprentissage durant leur parcours académique, que ce soit dans un collège ou une université. Puis ensuite, le fait de se retrouver comme un professionnel travaillant dans une organisation.
Une question de suivi, il y a des étudiants qui sont venus à la conférence aussi. Ça a été une bonne expérience pour eux.
Oui, merci pour EnergyMB. Oui, on a eu la possibilité justement d'inscrire 3 étudiants aujourd'hui avec nous qui ont assisté aux 2 journées. Ça s'est fait un petit peu dernière minute, donc les étudiants n'ont pas présenté, mais si on a l'occasion l'année prochaine d'être là, je pense que j'accompagnerai des étudiants pour qu'on puisse faire des présentations. Parce que nous, on a beaucoup de projets en lien avec l'efficacité énergétique, donc on aurait pu présenter aussi, en plus de présenter le cheminement de l'université. Il y a beaucoup plus de possibilités où là, on aurait exploré un projet spécifique, puis donné tous les détails, le cheminement, la stratégie, le travail de gestion qui s'est fait, mais aussi voir l'autre côté académique où là, on a plusieurs projets en lien avec les énergies vertes, en lien avec l'efficacité énergétique, et les étudiants auraient pu présenter.
Oui, mais c'est vrai.
C'est quelque chose qu'on ferait peut-être l'année prochaine.
Pour la prochaine édition.
C'est ça.
Et puis de votre côté, est-ce que tu peux nous décrire ton cheminement de carrière?
Oui, bon, alors ça, c'est la question la plus difficile, Chantal. Oui, j'ai commencé par un parcours en ingénierie. Et après, j'ai fait finance, sciences politiques. J'ai commencé à travailler en finance, puis après, j'ai changé complètement de carrière où j'ai été enseignante de mathématiques dans des lycées français à l'international, en même temps que faire la gestion ou faire le lead d'un projet de développement durable. C'est comme ça que ça a commencé juste dans les écoles. Où là, j'avais la gestion de plusieurs projets d'efficacité énergétique, déchets, plusieurs projets au sein des écoles. Donc, aux Émirats Arabes Unis, j'enseignais aussi à l'université. Et
quels sont les projets que l'Université de Moncton planifie pour réduire leurs émissions?
Oui, bon, alors ça, j'ai dit hier, on a plusieurs projets qui sont en cours. En fait, le défi, c'est pour nous, l'Université de Moncton, c'est pas de travailler juste l'efficacité énergétique. Nous, on a 7 axes. Parmi ces axes-là, on a bâtiment énergie. Dans bâtiment énergie, un des points qu'on travaille, c'est l'efficacité énergétique. Mais sinon, on a plein d'autres projets en cours. Là, on travaille sur le transport en commun, donc on collabore beaucoup avec les 3 villes, donc Moncton, Riverview et Dieppe. Puis on travaille aussi avec Eco 360 pour les déchets. Il y a beaucoup de projets qui sont déjà lancés à l'université. Là, on aura bientôt des poubelles de déchets, de batteries. On songe aussi à changer nos contenants pour avoir des contenants réutilisables sur le campus. Donc, il y a plusieurs projets qui sont déjà en cours. Il y a toujours un défi, le défi des ressources humaines et ressources budgétaires, mais on va y arriver.
Et puis du côté bâtiment aussi, vous avez beaucoup de choses.
On a 47 bâtiments. C'est beaucoup de travail.
D'accord. Merci beaucoup de nous avoir visités aujourd'hui.
Welcome, Chris Mathis.
Thank you.
It's great to see you.
Thank you very much. Good to be here.
I know. So how's the conference? Like what kind of key things are you getting out of it?
Yeah, I think the conference is great. The continuation of the conversations around efficiency and other applications that can really help improve how we're using power. And also, I think there's more and more discussion around better understanding how customers need to more deeply understand how they're using energy. So the consumption side of things is important, because if rates are going to go up, you don't change what you're doing, you're just going to pay more for the same thing.
Yeah, things have to change. Yeah. Definitely, because and people were shocked, this past year, especially in New Brunswick at they were saying we still are using the same energy we did last year, but the bill is even higher. We didn't do anything different, but the price went up. Right. It was interesting to hear that.
Yeah. It's exactly what we need people to start thinking about, is what can we do differently?
Right.
What's on us to do differently versus expecting so much or all of the changes needing to come from somewhere else.
Correct. Exactly. Now, you're with an organization called Portfolio.
That's right.
For those of us who don't really know what that is, Fill us in.
Yeah, so portfolio has been evolving over many years. The owner, Mike Randall, has been developing and engaging with different parts of the sector, primarily in the Maritimes. Portfolio Solutions Group before that, and it had several different divisions related to disruptive markets and viable solutions was that part, which I was running. Now it's just all part of portfolio. We continue to work with municipalities, NGOs, departments, government departments, but also the private sector, early stage startups all the way through to mature companies here in the Maritimes primarily. And then both Mike and I have different parts of our practices that we're working internationally as well, depending on the nature of the opportunity.
What are the key projects that you're working on right now?
Yeah, so some of the things that we're working on, one of our major groups that a lot of what we do is centered around our passions. Mm-hmm. So the Smart Grid Innovation Network is an important client of mine. We believe in continuing to help and advance their national agenda to really establish a better understanding for all the different sectors involved in energy, which is really ultimately everybody.
Right.
And how we make this happen for Canada, because we're provincially regulated, but nationally there's a number of things that need to also be able to happen. It's a complex market in Canada overall with multiple markets. And so there's a lot of opportunity there to work with folks to advance companies' opportunities, both internationally coming into the Canadian market, but then also the organization itself. How can we help them develop programs that will support utilities in making transitional decision-making, informed decision-making. It's very hard for people to get out. We do trade missions, very much two-way trade missions, trying to expose more of Canadian organizations to what's happening in other markets and why maybe that should matter in terms of how we adapt and adopt into Canada. And so that's just one example. There's a couple of different types of clients. I still do a lot of work. A lot of my background's in commercialization, taking products to market, developing products, protecting the intellectual property.
Yeah.
So I still do a lot of that kind of work as well. And we do work with across many sectors, agriculture, government, as I mentioned.
What are some of the opportunities? And of course, on the flip side, what are some of the challenges?
I think there's a lot of opportunity to unify various people's needs and understandings about where things are today in terms of energy consumption, but also the opportunities to look at some of our resources and strengths and apply them in ways that are beneficial. And part of the challenge I see right now is that if you have an economic development organization, you have an agriculture organization, they actually have a lot of common issues. And if we understand the nature of the drivers of those, we need to knit them together. We've been built up over many, many years in siloed approaches to dealing with things. We need to tie those together. Just like IT got tied together, energy also brings us together. So if we can start to help people understand those things and bring more, let's call it a circular thinking, not just circular economic thinking, but circular practices, we could really be improving what's happening here in Canada. And that's our passion, is to try to have an impact nationally and locally.
Oh, what does the future look like 5, 10 years down the road?
I think there's a couple of key pieces of transitional change that will really unlock a wonderful amount of success for Canada. There's some regulatory things that need to be looked at to demonstrate what can be done, allowing people to then see how to act differently, both in terms of consumption, but also as companies and as governments. And that will provide so much more confidence to the private sector in terms of implementation and investment. And that allows Canada to be, I think, what a lot of people outside of Canada see, which is we're going to be a tremendous energy country, a clean energy company in the future. But we have to realize that ourselves. Our bioenergy sources alone is just one example. There's so much opportunity there.
Yeah, there is. And, in New Brunswick, where there's so much forestry and biomass,
exactly,
huge opportunities present themselves.
Yeah.
Thank
Absolutely.
you so much.
Well, thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah, Chris.
Appreciate it.
You're welcome. Hi, Kevin Woods.
Hi, Maria.
I'm really happy to have you on the podcast.
Thanks so much for inviting me to speak.
I know. Well, yesterday here at the conference, you were part of the opening panel. So what were some of the highlights that you got from sitting on the stage?
Yeah, the opening panel yesterday morning, led by Abby from Efficiency Canada, was a celebration of 20 years of efficiency here in New Brunswick. And it really set the stage for the conference here over the last couple of days, and told a little bit of the history of efficiency in the province, as well as a forecasting of where do we go from here.
Exactly.
There's in the world that we live in, it's sometimes hard to predict that, and it was great to to hear from panelists of the direction. There was commonality of distributed energy systems playing a bigger role in the world that we live in 20 years in the future, and it'll be interesting to watch that unfold.
So, what are some of the projects that your tribal council are working on right now?
Sure. So the North Shore Mi'kmaq Tribal Council is a capacity and resource hub that supports 7 Mi'kmaq nations here in the province of New Brunswick. Depending on program and service delivery, we will also provide services to up to 25 additional First Nations throughout Atlantic Canada. We are about a 90-person professional organization. We've got a number of different business units, a really strong health services team, a really impressive aquatics resource management team that does work with habitat restoration and species at risk monitoring, shoreline restabilization projects. Really strong technical services team that supports housing and infrastructure projects and initiatives in communities. And our energy services team that I lead is capacity for communities to support them participating in the energy transition. And so we work, a small team of practitioners work to find opportunities for economic participation for the 7 communities as a consortium. We look to develop labor force development programs, supply chain development programs, and the nations themselves are interested in taking the next steps in their energy journey. And so we do a lot of work supporting community energy planning. We're heavily involved in the First Nations energy efficiency program here in the province. We've co-developed that alongside partners at MB Power, and are now implementing that to all 15 First Nations here in the province. And again, meeting the communities where they're at and supporting their energy journey. A lot of conversation happening right now about a heightened level of embedded energy resources within community beyond just solar behind the meter applications.
And that's amazing. I would imagine that energy efficiency is playing not efficiency, but energy literacy. Like, people need to understand. There's a lot of misconceptions out there. Are you finding?
So energy literacy is at the heart of all of the work that we do, and we try to engage. We do engage and connect with communities in a number of different ways. My team has launched a very grassroots STEM camp that we brought into all 7 member nations. And last year we connected with about 150 Indigenous youth aged 5 to 12. And we've done that in partnership with other corporate partners. And so we want to start that energy literacy learning early. We also have a strong presence at powwows in our member nations to engage with the broader general public. And then on the leadership side, we supplement capacity and community to explore possibilities of what the energy transition will look like, and where we would like to infill, so we can provide project management support and technical services.
How about electrification? I know that a lot of tribal councils and the Maritimes are playing with electrolyzing their fleets, fishing fleets, and so on. Are you guys participating in any of that?
Yeah, I haven't been involved in any fleet or fishing fleet electrification projects yet, although there's some great work happening in PEI on that.
Yes.
Lennox Island First Nation definitely is doing some great work.
Yes, they are. They've been on the podcast.
Drew Bernard and his team there. Communities, and I spoke yesterday with my counterpart at Amlunguk, which is Fort Folly First Nation. And they have, as an example, just made a recent investment into their first electric vehicle as part of their fleet asset, and have desires to purchase sequential electric vehicles as fleet assets require replacement moving forward.
That's it. So what do the next year or 5, like what does the future look like for you guys?
I think for us, we're going to see we're continue to invest in energy literacy for Indigenous youth and community, and pathfinding. to opportunities within the energy sector. We see a bright future ahead.
Yeah. Do you see it on a career level as well? Because there's trades, jobs, there's a lot of work to be done, right?
There's a lot of work to be done. Indigenous communities are on average 10% years younger than the general population here in the province of New Brunswick. And that's an important metric for us to pay attention to, because, it means that there's a youth cohort that's up and coming and, can very much be the labor force of the future. And we see such a bright future in the energy sector that we're doing, what we can to plant those seeds early and allow them to grow over time in the direction of where we're going. But great announcement yesterday in the province: 450 megawatts of additional wind projects announced. The next REOI that we'll see another 400 megawatts of renewables procured here over the next couple of years. So that we're seeing that momentum, we're seeing the world change, and it's great to work with our member nations and support their participation in that journey.
Thank you so much, Kevin, for joining me today. It's really, I'm glad to have nailed you down.
Thanks so much, Maria. I really enjoyed the conversation.
Hi, Stephen.
Hi, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you, too. So tell me a little bit. So Stephen Kopp of Acre Architects.
Correct.
So you're an architect. You're here at an energy conference. Tell me, how's it going for you, and what are your takeaways so far?
Yeah, thank you. This is my first time at this conference, and I'm speaking today about a passive house project we completed a couple years ago in St. John.
Yep.
So I'm a co-founder of the company and a project lead as well. So yeah, really inspiring to see sold out conference in Fredericton for this. This is my first time again at this, but it's really, at the end of the day, it is a chance for us to connect with like-minded people about what's going to happen out there.
So you were talking about your passive house project. Share a little bit about that.
Right. So if people don't know, passive house is a voluntary, rigorous energy reduction, path to take for buildings.
Right.
So we chose this on a multi-unit residential project, largely due to the idea that for the owner that they can reduce energy costs, and it's a low cost housing project. Yeah. So it makes total sense for them. And it's all about comfort as well, which is really nice.
So what kind of things do you do? It's south facing, making sure the windows are getting as much sunlight to heat the home and to cool it in the winter months or summer months as well. So
a little bit, I guess. The name Passive House probably is one of their weak points of the program, because it's not necessarily all passive energy. It's meant to be about the passive systems in a way. So it still has mechanical devices and such, but it's really about air tightness, high insulation, reducing thermal breaks, and then introducing fresh air to compensate. So it's actually a fantastic program. Not easy, but it's great.
Yeah. Now tell me, what upcoming projects or ongoing projects does Acre have on the go right now?
We have a variety of things going. We have an office in Halifax and in St. John. So we're doing stuff all over the Maritimes, sports complex and swimming facility in Riverview. We're doing the new children's library in the Halifax Public Library downtown, seniors' homes, fire stations, all sorts of things all over.
What kind of things are you doing? Give an example of what type of things you look at when you're designing these buildings.
I think our passion is our office wants to create 100 transformational stories by the year 2030. So we are really searching out projects that make impact on communities. And then what we do is we have a really rigorous discovery process. We really investigate the history of the area, the context, and then figure out a way to transform that into something new. So that could be in any kind of project, but it's about figuring out what really makes the client tick or the community tick, and then figuring out how to reflect that somehow.
And that would be big. I would imagine there would be some opportunities and also probably a little bit of challenges in there as well as you're discovering.
We discover all the challenges, but we've got a nice process to kind of get through that.
Yeah, no, for sure. What's the next year or the several months coming up look like for you guys?
Summer's always busy for us with construction. We have a lot of things in construction, and we're always looking for what's next. I think we're getting more into health and community, and we have a branch at the Acre called Acre Cares. So it's all about community wellness and health. Right. So that can range from fitness facilities all the way to these long-term care and everything in between. But we're really passionate about that field of architecture and design. And we obviously are always trying to weave more sustainability into this. I think, as you see in the news, like I think south of the border things maybe are going backwards. So we're it's all the more important that we kind of drive it up here.
You mentioned the health side. I would imagine that's mold, mildew, all of those things you're keeping in the back of your mind as you're looking through these buildings.
Yeah.
That would be a huge challenge.
It is. I think choosing the right materials and the right methods to do it, but also tying that in with the user experience about light and flow and accessibility is really big. I think that's a forgotten element in a lot of our buildings that, we're slowly catching up to, or maybe quickly now. So that all weaves itself into like a healthy experience for the user places.
And the materials as well that you use.
Yeah. I think we're continually pushing to make these, on the health side, to make things feel less institutional, more home. Like you're not necessarily there for a long time. And I think that's really important to feel comfort. I don't think you feel health in a stiff environment.
Thank you so much, Stephen, for dropping by and chatting. Problem. All right. Hi, Bella. Welcome.
Hi, Maria. Thank you.
That's great. And welcome to the conference. It's wrapping up today. And you presented one of the sessions. What was it about?
It is about pathway to operational excellence through BOMA Best and BOMA Inspire program.
Really? So what were you digging into? Because this is an energy efficiency conference. How did your presentation tie into that?
So we all have been on this path for a while in terms of improving energy performance and operational performance and excellence, so on and so forth. But very often we don't talk about that, what the real perspective and how we see operations and how we see performance.
Right.
So the focus of my session was to bring some perspective to building performance and operational excellence as we see it as a building owners and managers and operators, and how can we use programs like BOMA Best to leverage that knowledge and the platform and the years of experience that lies within the commercial real estate so that you can get on the path to improving performance. And then the other part of my presentation was about the new Inspire program. It's a $25 million program that was funded through Natural Resources Canada. And the whole focus of that program is to advance deep retrofits and performance improvement and whole capacity building and as well as the awareness to advance performance. The program doesn't provide any incentives for actual implementation, but it's everything that's before that, like all the pre-project work.
Because I always envision BOMA, it's the big buildings, it's the huge ones. You have the huge ones, but you also have the small to medium size.
Absolutely. Yes. So predominantly we work with large building owners, and part of the program, the Inspire program, is also targeting the mid-tier, we call Class B and Class C.
Right.
So that's kind of the target audience that we are going for under the Inspire program. Anyone can participate.
Right. So what projects do you have on the go right now?
Well, this is the largest project,
the
Inspire
BOMA
program.
Best in the Inspire. Yeah.
BOMA Best, that's our, I'm not sure if you know, but BOMA Best is our buildings. It's a building management and certification program.
Okay.
So it is a building management tool with certification at its core.
Okay.
So the focus of BOMA Best is how you run the building on a day-to-day basis.
Wow.
And that's one thing that we don't really look at on a regular basis as we talk about building certifications, because you think that certification is just a moment in time and you kind of fill out the check boxes and then you kind of carry on, but that's not it. So BOMA Best is a lot more than that.
A lot more. Okay.
Yeah, it offers you a pathway to improve your building performance.
Right. So your ongoing program right now is the Inspire program.
Yes.
Yeah.
So BOMA Best is that's our flagship program, and then we have the Inspire program over the next couple of years to help accelerate and support our industry in that journey.
Yeah. No, it's great to have you here as well. What does the future look like down the road, like in the next year or so? Are you hopeful, optimistic, cautiously?
Absolutely. I mean, the regulatory landscape is changing and the political one, but we kind of stay away from the political side of things and the business need to improve performance, because that affects the asset value, that affects the the actual operational cost. So there's clearly a business value for improving performance.
Right.
So we're kind of staying away from the political side and just focusing on the business need or the business interest in improving the performance.
That's important. It's important to do. Well, thank you, Bala, for joining me today. Safe travels back to Toronto.
Thank you.
All right. That's a wrap from the MB Power Energizing Efficiency 2025 conference. A big thank you to MB Power for creating space for these important conversations, and to everyone who took the time to speak with me. What we heard today makes one thing clear. The clean energy transition is already happening in buildings, in communities, in classrooms, and across entire regions. If you found something in this episode that inspires you, share it with a friend or a colleague. And don't forget to subscribe to Reimagine Energy for more conversations with the people rethinking what's possible. I'm your host, Maria McGowan. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.